is AP Lit. What do you mean by periodic? You kind of said it earlier, but just repeat it.
The details and the description.
So like in the first sentence, it's, I came just near dark to this house. It's to this house comes first. So you can always conclude that whatever the author puts first is generally the most, is what he's trying to emphasize. He puts the emphasis, first of all, our entire language is based on subject, verb, object. The English sentence, subject, verb, object, that means we think the most important thing for you to know is the subject first, and then the object and what that subject's doing. So when you see something that's different from that, what else is at the beginning? To this house. So that can make you conclude that this is not about the person, it's about the house. The focus is on the house. Good. Actually, most of the sentences, not to be quibble about it, are loose, but there are several sentences that have an introductory statement like that, and that's really good. That's important to note. Yes, Claire.
I noticed that, like, when she's talking about, like, her, like, drive to the house, she talks about how, like, the car let her out. And, she described how, like, the walk was a short distance, it was only a mile, but at the end of the paragraph, it talks about how, like, the path keeps on going further and further, and she can't see any, like, life in, like, her journey. And so I thought that was kind of, like, irony in, like, the word choice, but I think it's also, like, gonna help characterize the house later in the story, because, like, when you're on the outside, it looks very, like, nobody lives there, but the people on the inside are very, like, nice people, just, like, warm inside the house.
You know Jane Eyre? So you've actually read this. And I have too, a long time ago. But so you know what's going to happen. That's helpful. That you know that. That's good that you do. I appreciate mentioning that last sentence. Look at the way that last sentence is written. Did you hear what she said? It seems that he gets out of the cart, and it seems to take forever to get to her. It takes forever to get to the house. That's particularly emphasizing that last sentence. How is it done? Look at that last sentence. What is it about that last sentence, the way that it's written, emphasizes, and she says that it goes on and on, that he's still trying to get, or she's still trying to get to the house. What do you notice about it? Jonathan, what do you notice about that last sentence?
I think it is the longest sentence.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's got pauses, like, all throughout it, where
Yeah.
it takes you a while to get through it.
So what is the sentence actually imitating?
Like, the path.
You get that? The sentence is written in a way that imitates the path that you stop, you turn around this tree, and then you go, and then you pause. You know, it's not a straight shot, and it goes on and on. So that's really good that you notice that. The sentence stretches on like the sense, sound and sense. Remember that? Good. We've gotten a good start here. We don't want to spend all our time on it, but do you see other things? Olivia, did you see anything else? Sentence, we've mentioned syntax twice, and I commend you for that. Talked about periodic and what the details at the beginning, and this sentence. You notice anything, again, diction?
I underlined like a lot of the parts when he was describing like the place around him and said they were concrete, just like talking about the pillars and the close rank trees and iron gates.
Very good.
And dark frame.
Very good. Iron gates, granite pillars, close rank trees, you mentioned that. The aisle, you know, like this is an aisle, right? So usually you think of it as chairs that you go between, but this is talking about the trees. And the arches, what do those words have in common? Arches, pillars, granite pillars, iron gates. What are all those words together?
They're all like structures.
And what kind of structure?
Heavy.
Yes, very. Have you ever noticed banks? They don't do it anymore, but they used to build banks with these huge pillars in front. If anybody go to Beaufort, North Carolina, you know Beaufort. I think it's called Front Street right there. No one knows Beaufort. Anyway, they have a bank, and this is a real little town, and it's just this stretch of road. But they have this bank on the corner. It's made of granite or marble, I don't know, and these huge pillars, like you're walking into the Lincoln Memorial or something. Why would banks want to give you that appearance? Like that this is a solid, big pillars, yeah.
And that does establish like trust and like it makes the bank look like put together, and so
Yes.
if you're gonna put your money.
Absolutely.
You want the bank is like secure.
It's all PR. You know, the bad guy, where's the money? The money's not in the pillars, it's in that vault. You could put the vault in a tent, you know, as far as that's concerned, and the bad guy still has to get into the vault. So it's all appearances. But they want to give you that appearance of solidity, and that's what you have here. You have this bank looking, and it's got a wall around it. You know, why do you put walls to keep people out? You did a really good job with that. I don't see anything else that, and you see what you've done. You've answered the question. I really commend you for that. You answered the question: diction and syntax and meaning. And in this case, meaning is, you know, what emphasis or what attitude are they trying to suggest? How do you do it with poetry? And I don't have a poem for you. You have lots of poems. The last thing I want to mention is, you know, we talked about doing that. This is prose. You do the same thing with poetry. I'm just going to throw out some poems that we did. You might want to jot them down. You have all these. And remember, you're going to be able to pick any poem that we've done. All right? You're going to be able to pick poems. And I'm not mentioning the six romantic poets. They're in the book, and we talked about some of those yesterday. So these aren't those poems. These are other poems we did. Sound and Sense. I don't know if you remember this. You have a copy. I'd like to point that out in a minute. Batter My Heart, Three-Person God. These are great poems to look at the structure of them, the syntax, the diction. And then a couple by Frost, Out, and Mending Wall. And then we did first couple of days, I think, on reading poems to a senior class at South High. You remember the fish imagery? He was describing his class as frozen fish, and then they started talking about poetry, and they started swimming around, and they leaked out of the room and all that. And the Dickinson poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, I think we did that one. I'm sure we did that one. But I'll just point out one that's really good. It's called Sound and Sense. And remember, in this poem, the whole poem the purpose was didactic. You remember what that means? Yeah.
It's like a poem to teach a lesson.
Right. And that's a legitimate thing to do if that's your purpose. You're not hiding it. This is what I'm doing. So he's writing this poem about it. Remember how he matched the words and the rhythm to the meaning? Like he said things like, soft in the strain where zephyr gently blows and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flows. Remember we said that all the S's, the words that start with S, it creates alliteration. It gives you a flowing kind of feeling because it's easy to say and it's quick. But then he changes it and he says, the hoarse, rough verse should like the torrent roar when Ajax strives some rock's vast weight to throw. The words are harder to say. Hoarse, you have to stop it and then start again. You can't say smooth stream, smoother. They just flow together. Hoarse, stop, rough, verse. Those words are chosen because it takes longer to say them, which is what his point is. Some verse has to move slowly because the meaning is slow. And he's talking about Camilla scouring the plain and flies over and so forth. So that's a great poem to look at to illustrate how word choice, diction, in this case alliteration and rhythm all work together to create a sense of slowness and heaviness to describe a slow, heavy character, or quickness and speed to describe a light, quick character. That's the kind of answer I would love to see on the exam. but more importantly, that's what you need to be able to do in May when you see these poems. You need to just find all sorts of things that we just need to keep practicing. Let me just see, yeah, let's see, 5, 10, 15. Got 15 minutes, and we just did 7 and 8. We've done that. The rest of these, I think, are pretty. You already know them. We've written papers on them. You'll get back all the King's Men. You can add that. But do you have any questions about that? I'm gonna give you the rest of the period anyway. But yeah, we'll start here.
What exactly do we need to know for Pride and Prejudice?
Right at this moment, I don't think I'm going to put anything on there. I did not, as of yet, I have nothing, and I don't think we didn't discuss the book much. We didn't spend a lot of time with it, so I'm not going to include it.
Wait, which book is that?
Pride and Prejudice. I wish we did. I wish we could read it together because it's great. I just don't feel like we spent enough time on it to justify. Yeah.
So like number 5, right? Like,
Hang on, one more question. They have others after.
so like number 5, what would be like their view of nature?
Anybody want to help us with that? Like, remember, nature is really important to romantics, and we're talking about the 6 romantic poets: Wordsworth, Coleridge. In fact, Wordsworth. First, think of the poets. Think which poets actually emphasize nature. It was Wordsworth. Wander lonely as a cloud. The world is too much with us. He talks about nature in that. In Coleridge, Kubla Khan. Remember Xanadu and the way he described that. The Two Autumn by Keats. So each one of them deals with nature, but differently. So that's what you would have to do, is think about, say, those 3 poems, and discuss what is that. For instance, take Two Autumn. You remember what Keats did? What was how did he deal with nature? Yeah.
It was like, he had it like in like 3 stanzas, but it was like, the way he did it, like its syntax was just like making you like think it was like just doing one day, but it was like really.
Yeah, the structure of that's a good point. The structure of that poem is like the season of autumn, beginning, middle, and end, the day, the beginning, the morning, the afternoon, and evening. So he structures the poem to imitate both of those things. Anything else about Two Autumn that comes to mind? Remember, I wouldn't say he deified it, but he talked about the abundance. That whole poem was about the abundance of nature, and about how rich everything was in summer, and how it's reaped in early autumn. And remember, you have the reaper autumn is described as one of the men who's reaping the field, and he's asleep, and he has his hair blowing, and somebody thought it was a girl. It might have been a girl, but and then at the end, it's all gone. It's all stubble field. And remember, he's talking about the change of time. What transit? What's the word we use? The elapse of time.
Transit.
Yeah, just the fact that transience of time. Time just keeps moving, and so it makes us realize life is like that. So that's something you can say about nature. He uses nature to contrast in World is Too Much With Us, Wordsworth. He contrasts nature with the people who don't care about nature and are just like robots and are greedy and all this, and they're missing out on all this nature stuff. And he'd rather be a pagan enjoying nature. So he almost deifies it. He almost makes it into a god. And what was the other one we mentioned? Kubla Khan, remember? It's just crazy. That's a wild poem. Got blocks of ice blowing up in the air, underground caverns. So it's kind of scary. So those are 3 different ways of dealing with nature, which is what the Romantics do.
Could it also be like human nature?
Well, of course, but they mean nature. The Romantics were talking about nature out there. And a couple of them had to do with social justice. So don't forget, remember the chimney sweeper, remember Jerusalem, remember London 1802. We need Milton. We got to have Milton. because we're a bunch of lazy, greedy, complacent people, and we need Milton to give us manners, to give us nobility and so forth. Yeah.
So for like each of the books we read, when we did those PowerPoints before, are we gonna need to know
No,
like the
no.
information?
Yes.
I'm still kinda unclear on what we need to know about Thoreau. Do we just need to like the questions we answered?
Yeah, except, condensed. I mean, we did a lot more than you're gonna be able to use, but it mentions, 3 areas, right? Did it have the reading one on here? I need to look at that. But anyway, number 6, he talks about the higher laws. But earlier in the book, he talked about work. Later in the book, at the end, he talks about conformity and simplicity. So I don't know what the question would be, or questions. Maybe I'd separate that. But you remember what he said about the higher laws. He's always trying to move to the higher, the noble. You know, he said we have 2 natures, the base nature, that silly thing. He said grab an animal and eat it raw. I mean, it's almost ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But do you remember what he said about the higher laws? He talks about alcohol and eating meat, as well as sexual chastity. What's his purpose? What's the big deal? Just go eat a good meal. Don't worry. Don't think so much. Yeah.
Well, I have a question on something else.
Okay, but hold that. Do you remember what his higher point? Why was he always going to the higher thing, the more noble thing? Probably, maybe we don't know why. Maybe that's the wrong question. But the fact is, he honors those things. He honors the higher and the noble things, and it's consistent with Scripture. God wants us to be thinking about the noble things. Think on these things. And he talked. I really thought it was timely to talk about the benefits, the values of purity and chastity in a world that's a huge issue. There are benefits to that. It's not like, what am I missing out? Remember yesterday that we were talking about missing out, and he's trying to point, yeah, you're gaining so much by being pure and chaste. So that would be something I think would be where I would expect that, because he puts a lot of emphasis on that. What does he think about work? Yeah.
He thinks like work is like essential if you want to like achieve your dreams. So if you have a dream.
But what kind of work? Like, what would be the purpose of work? It's been a while. But remember, he talked about people, or he didn't use the word robots, but people are like robots than they were. They just work and make money to pay a mortgage, and they go to work, make money, pay mortgage, they go tomorrow. And he said, make your needs so small that you don't have to work so hard. You know, but don't need so much. Simplify your life so that you don't need all these things. Live in a hut instead of a mansion. Then you can spend time reading literature. It sounds so, in a way, it sounds silly compared to our views today. You could read literature, and you could pursue higher things rather than working just to make a bigger house. Just make your house bigger. Got to have a bigger house. Wow. He said, figure out what the 4 essentials are, and so. And you had a question. Sorry.
I just had a question about, like, are there any specific dates that
No.
are in the
No, this week, none of the midterms or finals will focus on the details like that. You get to pick the details. You want to throw some dates in there, go right ahead. I mean, that's always helpful. It increases your credibility if you do that. So maybe you should go look back at Thoreau. Remember, I don't think I would ask you all those. We spent more time with reading. That's not even on here, which I need to go ahead and add that, because I think that would be something that would help you, because I think that's something you know better than some of the other things. So the higher laws and the reading. Remember, he talked about why reading's so important. He talked about the value of the written word over the spoken word, and reading classics over the easy reading, and why that's so important. I think that would be, I should have included that here. That would be really more important, because we spent more time on it than the work. and the other thing that's there, whatever, conformity. We didn't get to spend a lot of time on that. Yes?
What's the structure of the written test?
It's going to have a series of short answers, like paragraph length answers, and a long answer, like an essay. And you only have an hour and a half. Some of you could take an hour and a half, and this is a good thing. If you had an hour and a half, you could take a whole hour and a half to write one essay. It's just that in this world we don't have that much time. In AP we don't. So I'm going to give you several, and you get to pick. That includes ideas from this sheet. So you'll be picking and discussing, and your problem will be writing too much. Because you know a lot, you have a lot to say, and I still have to get to that essay. So that's usually what happens in AP. You're right, because it's not that hard. You remember this stuff, and you're going to be writing, I got to stop so I can do the next one. So that's going to be how it works, yeah.
What's the time limit for orals?
5. I mean, that's the limit. The bottom limit, I think, is 3. The minimum is 3. And again, you guys could talk for 10 minutes. I'm not worried about that.
I thought it was 3 last year.
Last year was 3.
Okay? I stand corrected. And I think 4 is not a problem, but I'll double check that. You do definitely need to know that.
Freshman year was 2, right?
Yeah.
Last year was 3. I think it was 4 or 5.
Well, I will have to double check. We both need to be on the same page. Ms. Roberts may have has she told you anything different? Did she even say at all?
I usually really
That's normally what it is, but I'll check with whatever Ms. Roberts and I decide is fine. Yeah, I will double check. We just need to be on the same page. Anything else? Claire?
So we should not.
They get mad. I think
Freshman year they gave us like literally
Let me add one thing.
studied so
Claire just asked me how much of the romantic poets you need to know. What I want you to do is you get to pick. Like if the question is about nature and romantic poets, you get to pick the poets, you get to pick the poems, but you got to tell me the name. Like I would expect, particularly in the writing part, to hear this is "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud" by Wordsworth. So don't just tell me there's this poem about this guy who was wandering. That's not enough. I need to know the name of the poem. That's part of a credibility thing. You need to sound like you know what you're talking about. So name it and claim it. Name it and as far as poet and poem. Any other questions? We still have 2 more days. I'm going to be, if I find anything else I can share, we can practice. I'll do that. I will give you Huck Finn tomorrow. So thank me later.